feeling good Italian job.
I'm feeling good, Tommy boy. How are you, brother?
I'm doing great. Had a big week. Officially signed up for Grow Ruck 32 in Hampton Roads. I get to be one of our trainers, which is going to be great because that means I'm back under the log with a big group from F3 Greensboro. So I'm excited to bring some new guys into the world of the GTE. Also means I've signed off on a personal plan to drop 20 LBs in the next couple of months before I touch down in Hampton Roads. So come this time next week, I may not be as chipper as I usually am, but I'll be a little bit slender. So how are you, my friend?
I dig it, man. That sounds great. So last time we spoke, I mentioned that I was going to try this stand-up paddleboard AO thing. It was phenomenal. But I learned that you need a stand-up paddleboard, not a stand-up kayak.
Yeah, you had me worried when you shared that.
Yeah, that kayak doesn't really glide through the water like these, 7-pound inflatable paddleboards. My 89-pound kayak, trying to stand up on that joker, I'm going triple, quadruple the amount of strokes to keep up with those guys. I'm like, yeah, that's not going to work out. But it was fun, and they pitched a name that I thought was top notch, and I think you would appreciate it, calling it the Big Deck Energy.
Nice. Tommy boy approved.
I figured you would. I'm just going to leave it there, not really describe what that stands for. But yeah, it was an enjoyable time. And as far as upcoming Grow Rucks, I'm either going to be right now. I'm up in the air where I'm going to be in August, September, and October, and not sure which two I'm going to be a part of. So we'll see how that plays out. Depends on how things work around the family schedule.
Outstanding. We'll keep you posted because if we get to share some log time, that'll be a good day. And when the BDE t-shirts get printed, let me know. I'll sign up for one of those. I'm still working on top of a parking deck AO and calling it the upper decker. So we could swap t-shirts.
Oh, it's fantastic. You can do that. And never mind. That was almost inappropriate. There could be children listening. I'll move on.
I got my finger on the censor button.
Yeah.
Well, once again, Slack has come through. We've got a great episode this week. I'm excited to share it with the guys. There's always some really good chatter across many of the channels. If you're hearing this and you're not on the Nation's Slack channel, get on there, or the Nation's Workspace rather, because there's a lot of channels that offer up a lot of great content and even better ideas. Same is true here. Was trolling the Nantan Slack channel, got tagged in a few conversations, and once again, F3 St. Louis came through. What started out as the Encyclopedia GMO turned into a great piece of Excel spreadsheet tabs, and one of which is how the guys are finding opportunities to groom the next generation of F3 leaders. And not just, hey, here's a stuff or a thing worth trying, if you will, but here's a guy who's going to help you clear the path. When I was serving as Nantan, the way I described my job was, if there's a guy looking to accelerate, I just want to help get any roadblock out of that guy's way. And these guys have put it to a formula, tested it. It's tried and true. So today we've got a couple of studs coming out of F3 St. Louis. Without further ado, Ronda, Frozone, welcome to the podcast. I'm going to go the way that you're laid out on the Brady Bunch screen here. Ronda, tell us a little bit about your name and Rama, how long you've been doing F3, and how'd you get your name?
Christian Robert. 42 Ronda. I have been posting since February of 2019. I got my name because I wrestled and I dabbled in wrestling in high school and college. And one of the guys knew I wrestled and asked me that. But no one prepped me for the naming. I had no idea. I was just wiped. I had gotten out of shape, and they're like, they got me in the middle of the circle. I'm surrounded by 20 dudes, and they're like, hey, you wrestle, right? And I was just ready to throw down. I was like, yeah, I'll wrestle anybody. But they named me after Ronda Rousey, and I wear it as an honor because she is way tougher than I am. And I was previously blessed to have followed GMO as Nantan of St. Louis, handed it off to Frozone, and now am supporting the Nation as the North Central Sector Q.
And
excellent segue.
Tommy boy, I'd like to point out that every guy that I've met in F3 that has a female name, has a chick name, is a stud. So shout out to Rhonda, the Roxannes, the Cindys, the Mary Lou's. good on you. You guys are studs.
Agreed. Plus, Ronda Rousey is a former women's WWE champion of the world. So, I mean,
That
that's
has nothing to do with wrestling, but we're
Whoa,
good.
what? You know I live in North Carolina, right? Or North Kakalaki, as Junkyard Dog would say.
It's
Don't-
wrestling. It's
Yeah.
wrestling. Get it right.
Don't speak that sacrilege. I'm sorry. I'm driving through a tunnel. I think we're losing you, Rhonda. Frozone, my friend, tell us a little bit about yourself. Name-a-rama, how long you been doing F3? How'd you get the name?
Yeah, Steve Puzak, 34, Frozone. I've been doing F3 for 2 years as of tomorrow. Started, actually was EH'd by an FNG at the time, who's my next door neighbor. Before he posted for the first time, we were kind of both dragged out by Lube in F3 St. Louis. And Scalper's one of my Shield Lock brothers now too. So it's going well there. But I got my name really because there were several FNGs that day, and they were trying to get through the name-a-rama kind of quickly, and got to what I do for work, which is sell HVAC systems or heating and air conditioning systems commercially, and went down the Freon, Mr. Freeze route and ended up on Frozone. So I think I really lucked out with a nice name.
Well, I can tell you my 2.0s approve of it. When I shared who was going to be on the podcast that week, I immediately went into the Incredibles, and all I heard yesterday was, "Where's my super suit?" So you definitely delivered, my friend. Well, fellas, I want to get right into it because my hope is just like the past several weeks of this podcast, guys are going to be fired up to log in and see what it is you guys are sharing. The document alone is phenomenal. Anybody who knows GMO knows that he doesn't half-ass anything. GMO whole asses anything he does. And this is no exception. It's a great leadership document. It will be featured in the updated stuffworthtrying.com in the coming weeks. But there's a certain tab which is what started this whole conversation, which is the emerging leadership tab. And it's your guys' concept. You created it. So I'm going to shut up and get out of the way. However you want to handle it, tell us what this tab is, or maybe a better way to put it is, tell us about the genesis of this tab.
All right, I will kick it off. So the Emerging Leaders tab in our 43 feet document here is really a place for the shared leadership team of our region to collaborate and really kind of point out and focus on guys that we see leadership qualities in, and guys who are accelerating, who have been recently unlocked maybe, or just really are ready for the next step in serving the guys around them. Many cases, it's guys with a servant heart that we can tell already, but it's crucially important for us as a region to continue to find out the next generation of leaders and be pouring into them as much as we can, and not wait until the time that we're ready to pass the baton on to the next guy, but really have it being an ongoing process while we go. And the genesis behind it, I think Rhonda could probably talk to you a little bit better than I can, having been in this Google sheet for a lot longer than me. But Rhonda, why don't you take that?
Yeah, so the genesis is that we are, it's my belief, and I think most F3 men hold this belief, we are a leadership development program. And so we use these really hard workouts to facilitate virtuous leadership principles. And our whole thought process is, how are we investing in that next man up? How are we unlocking that person? How are we equipping them to be a better husband, boyfriend, father, so on and so forth? And critical to that component is understanding who are the folks that we're pouring into that and having some structure around that. And candidly, I need guardrails, and I need men in my life to hold me on those guardrails. And this tab was really that guardrail. And so it became a huge focal point for me on every SLT call, that we understood, like, how are you investing in your team? And who are they investing in? And then beyond that, who are the folks that we need to start adding to teams? Enter this tab. And so the only real requirements for us is, if we wanted them to be a leader, we wanted them to read the Free the Lead. We really wanted them to embody the spirit of passing praise, and taking blame. Someone that embodies that. So if they check those boxes off and we felt that they were accelerating and helping others, they went on that, and we were intentional about, did we touch on them? Where are the updates? And that was the main thing I wanted to touch on it every single time. And then the other genesis was we really prescribed to the launching the starfish model. And so inherent in the starfish model, which really means like we cannot go west or south or north as fast as another leadership team could. So inherent in that was the need for us to invest in leaders to then push out to the west and push out down Jefferson County and push out to St. Louis City and to Illinois and north. And so we had to keep pumping through this list because we just could barely keep up with the leaders and the growth and what have you. And so that became culturally a mindset in St. Louis of constantly investing. Even within an AO, you were the second F person in that AO. You were constantly thinking, who's the next person that I could be training to take over for me?
Yeah, what I hear out of that is something that should permeate all regions worldwide, which is you are basically working yourself out of a job. It's the only thing in my life, the only career path, so to speak, that your job is to find your replacement. The day you take the mantle of the site Q or the first FQ or the Weasel Shaker or Nantan, anybody in the SLT, you are looking for that next guy. And you guys both hit on it. We are a leadership group disguised as a fitness group. That fitness is what's going to bring the guys in. But if we stay in just the fitness space, then we're missing out on the entire mission of F3, which is to invigorate male community leadership and being intentional. You mentioned kind of that intentionality. So in that slide itself, kind of what are the areas, what are you putting in there? Name, what qualities, what are the aspects that you plug in to that so that all the SLT has it captured on a running list of these guys? What are you putting into that spreadsheet?
Yeah, basically their name, and then if we know any of their personal skills, what they do for work, we'll fill that in. But then as far as like qualities go, we're looking at the going back to the pass praise, take blame type of qualities that Rhonda mentioned. But guys who really are willing to go above and beyond to engage in conversation and help guys next to them. And then we have an area for, what could be a potential role for this guy to get plugged into. And each of the shared leadership team roles in our region have some sort of team underneath them as well. So, can we get them plugged into the third F team or, the Rucking Q team and have them start organizing some events? And really, we kind of go all the way on down to the AO level and not just having a site queue, but kind of an idea that our region kind of pushed out last year was to really invest in a mini shared leadership team at each AO and get more leadership opportunities out there for the guys to step up and like have a second F guy for your site, have a third F guy, have a Rucking Q or a Q source Q, and just creating those opportunities to let guys develop their leadership skills and then to kind of see who stands out and, who's hungry for more, who's ready for more. Let's bump them up on this list and carry those conversations forward.
I like the idea that there's not a time frame built around this. I think it's easy to get stuck in a rut when let's use the site queue as an example. The standard quote unquote is that you have it for a year, right? And I think it's easy to let dust settle. If you're on cruise control, you're not going to get tagged for anything else. You just got to be responsible if that AO has a shovel flag to plant that flag and sign up site queues. And the easy way to do that is to hop on Twitter or Slack and guilt trip guys versus being excited about serving in that role, having a one-on-one conversation with a guy that you see across a COT that has leadership qualities or that is always picking up the six. Man, let's get that guy on the queue. I bet he's got some tricks up his sleeve to keep us invigorated, keep us moving. Is that a planned thing or was that something that it seems to me like this spreadsheet, and all of us in our mammon world might think spreadsheet, oh God, and give a, phenomenal eye roll. But this is it seems like a living document. Is that a fair statement? And how do you spot that guy across from the COT?
So I'll let Frozone talk about the spot the guy, but just to back up and emphasize on your point. So one of the things I've observed now as working with at the sector level, I talk with a lot of Nantans. I hear a lot how folks are getting burnt out, how my SLT might be getting burnt out, high site queues or AOQs, whatever you call them, might be burnt out. And I firmly believe that those men are taking on a lot, and God bless them, because they love their brother so much, they want to do so much, but they can get burnt out, and in so doing, it becomes a blind spot because they're not pushing off, like, it is a shared responsibility, this entire investing in others. And so the question that has come up is, so how long should I be, should I set up term limits? I'm like, when I took over, I knew I wanted to launch X amount of regions, and Frozone knows this. I actually wanted to wait till after we launched downtown St. Louis City, and then I was going to step aside, and that launches here in a few weeks. But it became quickly apparent that there was no need, because the next man up, Frozone, that I had been investing in, he was ready. So the time was now to step aside and let him go. And so I would challenge men in any leadership role to identify the goals that you're looking to pursue. Once fulfilled, and you've been able to check the box on who's the person that I've been investing in to take on my role, it's time, and step aside. And I think that mentality also helps decrease the burnout, because you're constantly pouring into someone else, and there's motivation beyond just the hard work on. I'm investing, and that person has shared responsibility in promoting the same culture and giving it away.
And what a great status quo too, that you're totally disrupted. I think about back in my earlier life with civic clubs, right? You felt like you couldn't sit at the big table with the big dogs because it was somebody else's seat. So you came into your luncheon every Wednesday and just sat off to the side, or God forbid you sat in somebody else's seat, because they'd let you know that you were in old crazy Kevin Powell's seat, right? You better move before he gets here. And he has to sit there and he has to have a sweet tea. And it was the same thing every week. So this younger generation that could be full of potential, and definitely is off on the perimeter. It's like a middle school dance, right? Whereas with this, guys are crossing the aisle, they're pulling dudes out of their comfort zone, saying, look, there's something about you that I dig, that you have a gift in there that we would all benefit from. Let me help clear out some roadblocks, and let's get you in that position. So that to me is the perfect example of disrupting the status quo. I'm glad you put that out there.
So how do you get your SLT, who may have spreadsheets in their mammon all the time? How do you get those guys to say, man, I don't want to participate in filling out a form? There may be some guys in SLTs who say, it's just not for me. Is that an expectation of the leaders in your region, that if you see somebody that is an emerging leader, identify them so that we can keep our tabs and work with them?
Yeah. We haven't really run into that too much yet from personal experience in our SLT, but we do leave room in each of our biweekly shared leadership team meetings to have that discussion too. So if someone's not willing or regularly getting into the spreadsheet to make updates, we talk about it. And usually it's me as Nantan or our Weasel Shaker will input some notes there. But you're right. Going back to Tommy Boy, this is a living document that gets updated routinely every week, ideally.
And they're all volunteers, by the way. So that's what I used to have to tell myself early on.
You don't pay your guys?
Well, we haven't since, again, GMO's bonus used to cover a lot of this. But I hear the SLT team in the nation is living large.
I mean, that severance pay is pretty dope. So
it's you don't see that kind of investment anymore. But because it's volunteer, if it didn't happen, it was never because they didn't want to. And so I think what has been unique here is the credo and the benefits of the credo are so palpable. St. Louis, like, we see constant examples of that. That the mission's real, and it is something that we all feel. And we lean into ridiculously stupid and utterly pointless activities here, like the 24-hour event and Italian Job smoked us virtually 2 years ago. And that bonds us, and like we're close. And so we understand that mission. So it's not a matter of selling them on that, because, you know, i.e., this is what it can do to unlock someone. It's just reminding them they're really busy. But most have experienced or seen in their AO a person that had no idea what they had within themselves. Like we as men, unfortunately, we disqualify ourselves way too quickly and way below our line. And to see a man start pushing on that line is my why. It's so many of our whys. And when we see that in AOs constantly, they got it. So it's less, in my experience when I was an Antan, it was less getting them to do it. It was just getting them to do it because they saw the benefit of it. It was more, hey, we got to focus on this. This is what we do. And most of the time we did what Frozone said. I was very guilty of this. I was like, I forgot to touch my guy. I forgot to touch the person I was investing in. So, I'm a wrestler, you know.
I think you mean reach out, but
Yeah.
we'll leave it there.
That's going to be the title of this podcast. I forgot to touch my guy. You know, what I really like about this conversation is oftentimes it's great when a dude steps in the middle and motivates the crew and talks about unlocking another man. This puts it all into action with a game plan. I also like the verbiage, right? You've got a tab in here, not a tab, but a column that is potential opportunity, which means you tagged a guy that you see qualities in that you want to unlock, and you admit to yourself that just because I saw this doesn't mean it can't convert into something completely different. For example, I would imagine, only because it's true here in Natville, finding an IT guy is tough because the ones who do it for a living, and they probably don't want to work in binary code on their off hours and set up a website and figure out mailing lists and all that, because they do it all day, every day, and collect a paycheck for it. What have you seen when it comes to tapping a guy on his shoulder and starting to turn that key to unlock him? Are you consistently right? Are you consistently wrong? Or is it somewhere in between?
Why doesn't Frozone speak about this from his perspective?
Tag, you're it, Frozone.
All right. Yeah. So I think it's good for us as leaders also to remember that, you know, something that we see in somebody maybe isn't the passion that guy has either. And he may have a passion to lead and serve in another way as well. So taking the time to slow down and have these conversations, these one-on-ones, and figure out what, you know, which direction does their heart, you know, which way are they pointing? Like, what do you want to serve in? What really gets you fired up? It's like, I could really see you taking over the role of Q source Q. You know, you've queued a lot of Q source discussions. You're good about the topics that you bring up, the questions that you ask. You travel around AOs, blah, blah, blah. But they're like, well, you know, I love Q source, but I also really want to invest in XYZ over here, and kind of maybe together working on what does that vision look like for their next 43 feet. But a lot of times, like Rhonda kind of alluded to, is we can see something in them that they don't see, but it's definitely there. And over time, you know, they can start, you know, realizing that in themselves as well, and, you know, gain that confidence to continue down that path and step up and be a leader of men. You know, I say a lot of guys that we work out with that come out to F3 that have not led other men in many things before. And even like finding that FNG, you know, maybe a couple posts in and asking them to step up to Q, that could be a scary thing to a lot of guys. I mean, it's probably to most of us, you know, if you're asked before you're ready, which we try to be very intentional about nudging guys before they think they're ready to Q. It's like, hey, you've been to a few beatdowns, you're ready. Like, you're not going to be ready 3 months, 6 months from now if you keep waiting. Let's do it now. Let's work on it together.
Yeah, it's the dolphin and the daffodil, right? It's the gift and the passion. Your gift may not be fulfilling to you, and your passion may not make you money. You find the intersection between the dolphin and the daffodil. That's the sweet spot. It's like the guy who gets pulled out at a Grow Ruck event. You know, he's hiding back in the crowd. God forbid the cadre taps my shoulder and says, "You're leading the next evolution." And I'm sure in their head, because it wasn't mine, thinking, I don't know how to do this by myself. Well, guess what? You're not gonna, because you got your entire platoon standing around you waiting to support. And I think that's what, again, I love that use of the word potential, because potentially he could be in this role, and potentially he could unlock or show you a whole nother potential to unlock within him. So I dig it. Rondo, anything you want to pile on top of that?
So he hit on the potential, which was what I experienced more often than not, is they did not see that potential in themselves. There was so much self-doubt, and I'm including myself in that camp. The GMO shares the story ever of me becoming Nantan. I was blocking it even before the I didn't even want to be an option. I was like, I'm disqualifying myself before you even ask. And I think the men of St. Louis would be shocked. Some of the, and we use this term very liberally, HIMS, high impact men, but like some elite high impact men that when I initially tapped their shoulder for, when I was the first FQ for site Q duties, or in the leadership role team as part of the leadership team, just were filled with doubt, and walking through that potential journey and realizing that is one of my, humbly, one of my greatest gifts that I've been able to witness, and why I continues to drive me. And so maybe they don't know what they have in them, and it's our job to help bring that out. And the only other thing I was going to say is, depending on the role, I pressure tested with multiple folks. Hey, are we all on the same page with this? And so like Frozone, I love you, but I'll use you as an example. Frozone didn't know if he's like me, the next man up. Like there's this person, that person. I'm like, you're the only person that I'm looking at for this. And there wasn't a single person who on their own did it, because I would ask blankly, hey, name a couple folks, and he was always on every single person's list. And so when they hit this, they've usually been pressure tested. There's a lot of eyeballs, and it's very intentional.
I think we've hit on we've hit on some really good points here. We've hit on preparing for the next 43 feet. We've talked about the next emerging leader, the next guy to step up and be unlocked. I mean, we're saying all the buzzwords of a flourishing region. And Tommy Boy, I don't know if you're aware of this, but during this conversation, they've launched 4 new regions out of St. Louis. That happened just because, these guys, that's just what they're made to do.
There's a workout that just broke out in my front yard while we were talking. So
yeah,
and they're wearing St. Louis shirts.
So it just shows that if you are intentional about where you're going, and sometimes it takes these guardrails, sometimes it takes a spreadsheet or some kind of a formal process to identify that next guy. But if you are intentional and you have a plan, it's just amazing what can happen. So to have Rhonda and Frozone who've shared this with us, I mean, it's obviously successful. Obviously, they've seen great dividends being paid out, and it continues. So I can just tell you guys, thank you so much for spending some time with us today to give us a heads up as to what's going down. And hopefully some of these other, regions who are listening can tune in. So I guess my question to finish it out is, Ron and Frozone, if the guys around the nation have questions and want to follow up about how do I do this? Why should I do this? Who should they reach out to? And I see Rhonda pointing in the corner down to Frozone. So how should the guys reach you?
Yeah, you can reach me by searching GMO on the Nation Slack. No, just kidding. I am on the Nation Slack as Frozone, one of the few Frozones on Slack. I'll look for the St. Louis one. I would spell out my email address, but it's kind of long. I think Slack's probably the best way. Otherwise, my cell phone, I'll give that out too, is in the show notes. I'll send it to you guys.
Perfect. Ronnie, you can't escape without being tagged as well.
I will talk to anybody. Like it is my dolphin daffodil have intersected at this organization to help men get unlocked. And I have a heart for the leader who's just, it's a top heavy region, and I want to help however I can.
Outstanding. We've said it before in different podcasts. I kind of hit on it at the beginning. My goal is to drop 20 by GTE 32, right? And if it's meaningful, it's measurable. You guys have found a way to measure out something meaningful when it comes to unlocking the next generation. We've heard obviously a lot, 43 feet, and you guys have fulfilled the full statement of the 43 feet, which you were lighting the way for the guys who were to follow, knowing that they full well will pave the next 43 feet and so on. So well done on lighting the way. Italian job. I'm going to throw this at you, but it's a completely out of the air. Do you have a challenge worth trying?
Since you put me on the spot, yes, I'm going to go ahead and say, why not use the spreadsheet that already exists that Ronda and Frozone are walking through? So we'll have it in the show notes. Use that. If you want to enhance it, if you want to modify it, modify as necessary. But it's a good point for us to set a baseline and say, all right, we've got to identify the next group of leaders. And the work's already been done. The spreadsheet's created. So just utilize it. Talk to your guys. You don't have to be on the SLT at your region to think through this. You might just look across the circle and say, that guy's only been out for a few weeks, but he's got this thing. The guys just follow and he takes care of everybody and he's got the servant leadership. He's got it on lock. Maybe mention that. Maybe even if you're not on the SLT, maybe pull the show notes, throw a couple comments in there, send it to your SLT. You might end up on that list before you even know it.
In more columns than you can imagine. I dig it. Yeah, the acronym is HIM, High Impact Man. It's not high SLT, man. It's not high Site Q, man. It's who's having the impact and who's paying it forward. So that's the key. Fellas, thanks for coming on, having a clutch conversation. This has been great. I'm fired up to see how different regions do it. I guarantee they're going to discover a litany of talent within their own regions of things that they never even thought possible. And it's got to start somewhere. And hopefully it started with today's conversation. So fellas, thanks for coming on the show. Podpaxers, as always, you can find us on Twitter at F3SWT. We are on Slack. Please, if you see a great idea, if you have a great idea, hashtag stuff worth trying. That way we can troll you, invite you on the show. We've got some great ideas coming up down the pike for future episodes, but it won't happen unless you continue to tag us on Slack or point us out on Twitter. Fellas, as always, be good or be good at it.